All right, we're gonna get started because I only ate half my dinner and I'm still hungry. But um, this is the first of many, hopefully, live weekly workshops. So I decided I've committed to doing a weekly workshop and Q&A every week, Thursday at 7 p.m. for a year. All right. So that's my commitment to you. I don't think anybody will pop on here today because this is a brand new group and I still haven't promoted it very strongly yet. So hopefully, as we keep going, more people will pop in and have questions and we can chat and have a good time. But so each week I'm going to kind of go over a training that I've put together, and you can find the Google Doc training of this presentation in here in the school group. And if you're watching this on YouTube, come join us here in the school group. So today we are going to let's see if I can figure out how to share my screen. Um, Come on, computer, work with me here. See if I can share screen. All right, cool. Hopefully this is working. I don't know what it looks like on the other side, but so today I'm going to quickly. This is kind of a larger document. The other documents are going to be a little bit shorter, and hopefully more people in the future will hop on and we can have more kind of Q&A. But today I figured we'd go over this bigger one. This is kind of the uh, full playbook for shoulder pain for lifters. So we'll just kind of go through it and talk about a couple of the kind of biggest talking points or the most important talking points, I think. And then we'll call it. We'll call it. So really quick, one thing before we jump in. If you are serious about fixing your shoulder pain, if shoulder pain is holding you up in the gym, and you're having a hard time training chest or arms or back or whatnot, and you've tried, you've saved things on Instagram, you've tried YouTube videos, and you've tried maybe even traditional physical therapy and haven't seen good results, I'm offering free shoulder pain discovery calls, and you can find a time that works great for you on my calendar right here. So, the playbook here, we're going to talk about why the front of your shoulder actually hurts, what's causing flare ups, how to train without making it worse, and how to keep this from ever coming back. So, if you're here, if you're reading through this document, maybe there's a good chance that the front of your shoulder has been a little bit disagreeable with your training lately. And that was me on and off for years. And still sometimes, I like earlier this year, I was having a little bit of AC joint discomfort that I was working through. And, but my shoulders have felt better than they have in years. And it was because I finally learned how to assess my shoulder like a physical therapist. So, by the way, if you're new here, if you don't know who I am, my name is Dr. Josh Elzey, and I'm a physical therapist. Uh, Started PT school in 2017, graduated 2019, and have been working with people in person and online ever since. So, before physical therapy school, I loved training, but my right shoulder would give me issues anytime I did upper body, especially if it was a pressing day, right? Um, Chest day or shoulder day or whatever. So that was me, and that's why I've decided to kind of shift gears and focus on this a little bit. I've done online training for various things, including back pain and weight loss. To be completely honest, I kind of got tired of teaching people how to track their food, so we've kind of made a little pivot here, and I felt like I could relate to this topic. So this is not for you if you've had a recent traumatic injury or your recent post-op surgery or whatever. That's a different story. But maybe you're training in the gym. Pain comes on here and there. Some movements feel fine. Some others you can still sort of train, but you're just inconsistent and frustrating. That's who I built this playbook for. So really quick, I want you to understand your shoulder isn't fragile. Um, our bodies are very resilient, but our shoulders are a very complex region of the body. And the shoulder is more than just a joint, it is a complex system. And often it's a system, part of the system is being asked to do more than it's ready for, or one part of the system isn't working good and another part of the system is kind of having to pick up the slack. um, so shoulders are a constant battle between mobility and stability. Inherently, the shoulder joint is one of the most, well, it is the most mobile joint in the body, and so it requires a lot of stability. And so shoulder pain. The other thing I want you to understand is shoulder pain and just pain in general is a mismatch between what you're asking of your body and what it can currently tolerate. Right. Um, so here's a cool little graphic. Maybe we can make this bigger for just 1 second. Um, all joints in your body are a trade off between mobility and stability. And some regions of the body in general require more mobility than stability, and other regions of the body require more stability relatively than mobility. And this is just like a cool little graph kind of showing. So the shoulder joint is the most mobile joint in the body. Next is hips. Then you've got elbows, spine. Anyways, just a kind of cool visual there, um, showing a couple of the joints in the body. One kind of principle that like blew my mind when I learned about this, as I was going through physical therapy school and honestly learning from other cool physical therapists online and stuff like this. I learned about the joint by joint concept, and if you can understand this, it will make like understanding how your body should move, and it will make rehabbing injuries so much more simple. Our bodies are very complex, right? But if you can understand this pattern, it will really help you. So, like I was saying before, some regions of the body require good mobility, but typically most people are kind of stiff in those areas. Other regions of the body need to have good stability, and typically people are weak in those areas. All right. So the joint by joint concept goes like this: there's a pattern in our body from the ground up in an alternating fashion. It goes like this: mobility, stability from one major joint to the next as you go up the chain. So, for example, ankle mobility, knee stability, hip mobility, core stability, so on and so forth, right? And so, if your knee is lacking stability, that's going to affect things above and below. If your hips are lacking mobility, that's going to affect the regions above and below, et cetera, et cetera. So, super important for you to understand that. Um, We'll do a quick anatomy review just for fun. I'm going to pull up the complete anatomy app. This is a super cool one. I love this. Um, so the shoulder is more than just one joint, right? Maybe we'll keep the muscles off for just a second, just so we can kind of see all this cool stuff. So you've got your glenohumeral joint, right? The ball and socket joint. You've also got your AC joint or your acromioclavicular joint. You've got your scapulothoracic joint, right? That it doesn't seem like a joint, but technically it is, where your scapula or shoulder blade articulates with your ribs. That is your scapulothoracic joint, right? So there's a lot going on. It's more than just one thing. Um, so uh, the main kind of key point here is just that your shoulder is a complex system, and the shoulder often sacrifices stability for mobility. All right. And that's when you get in trouble. That's when things get irritated, is when you're lacking stability usually. um, this will be another training that we'll go in more in depth into, but there's typically kind of three main buckets of shoulder pain. um, Bucket number one is the stiff shoulder. Bucket number two is the unstable shoulder. And I'd say majority of shoulder pain, majority of people fall into bucket number two. And then bucket number three is the weak and painful shoulder. All right. Um, Probably the most underrated piece to fixing your shoulder is the shoulder blade, right? Um, this is so extremely important, and so many people are weak here. So the shoulder blade has so much to do with how well the shoulder itself actually moves. And so, man, I sometimes don't even have to assess this in the clinic because I know that like 99% of people need to work on this, myself included. I would argue that every single person will always and forever just need to continue to work on scapular strength, right? So the muscles that help move the shoulder blade and provide stability for the shoulder complex. So your shoulder blade can and should do a lot of things: elevation, depression, retraction, protraction, upward rotation, downward rotation, anterior, posterior tilting, lots of stuff. And there's lots of muscles that attach to the shoulder blade. So, um, like we were saying before, when one part of the system is not kind of pulling its weight or doing its job, other parts of the system are going to get overloaded and irritated. Um, so, um, this is a kind of interesting thought, and I want you to kind of think about this. Diagnoses don't really help most people. All right. And a lot of times I've seen in the clinic, people kind of like latch on to their diagnosis or their condition. Um, but labels don't really tell you why it happened. And more importantly, they don't tell you what to change. Right. So labels do not equal solutions. Okay. So I want you to maybe shift gears away from, oh, I have a labrum injury, or I have impingement, or I have biceps tendonitis, or whatever. And I want you to kind of shift your focus more towards function. What can I do? What can't I do? How can I build up more tissue capacity and tissue resilience? Right. Um, I'm not going to go into the specifics of these kind of main ones, but just know, and these will be, for the, trainings in the future. The main kind of typical uh, conditions or labels for anterior shoulder pain: impingement, shoulder impingement. That's one you probably heard. Rotator cuff tendinopathy or tendonitis, right? It's probably one you've heard. And then AC joint irritation. This is one that I think is probably more common than people realize, and it's one that I mentioned before. I was kind of having a little bit of AC joint irritation earlier this year that I had to kind of work around. Typically, this becomes a problem when you're getting into deep ranges of motion, bench press, dips, wide grip pressing, especially. That's the one that got me. I was doing some incline pressing and having my hands probably a little bit too wide and going too deep and too heavy. My body just wasn't ready for it, and so I got a little bit of irritation there. So, um, okay, so quickly we'll talk about the 5 root causes of pain. Um, your next posture is your best posture, right? You've heard it before. Um, our bodies crave movement, and being in any position or posture for too long is stressful for our tissues. Our bodies like to move. Okay. So there's nothing wrong with, sitting in a slouched position, but there's lots of things wrong with staying in a slouched position for prolonged periods of time. Okay. So if you work at a desk, if you drive a lot, that's a lot of this. And so I would argue that most people these days need to kind of work their spines in the opposite direction that gravity tends to pull us into. So I mean, that kind of builds off of number one, but mobility restrictions. So especially thoracic spine mobility, that is a huge contributor to shoulder pain. So mobility restrictions in thoracic spine, that's a huge one. Scapular control, that is also a huge one. We already talked about that. Um, this is a really important graphic to understand right here. Um, so your shoulder blade has many muscles attached to it, but there's a few key players here, and these muscles work together as a force couple, right? So if this muscle's pulling this way, and this muscle's pulling this way, and this muscle's pulling this way, and they're all doing their equal part, then your shoulder blade moves like it should, and then your shoulder feels great. If one of these is weak or not doing its job like it should, that's going to kind of cause some wonky movement, and then you get some, some undue stress on other regions around the shoulder. So big key players here: middle and lower traps, serratus anterior. Those two, I'm sure you've heard a lot about. But a lot of people don't know how to isolate those or train those or progressions for those. So that's what we would teach you more about in there's a do-it-yourself program, by the way, in the school group. There's a do-it-yourself rehab program. You can check that out, and then as always, I'll plug a free call with me too. Rotator cuff function is the next one, and then probably one of the most important pieces to understand is load versus capacity. You'll probably hear me say that a lot. So load versus tissue capacity issues. This is where most people and most programs fail. So too much volume, too much intensity, too fast progression, not respecting recovery, the other side of the equation, right? So um, pain does not equal damage. Pain is just the alarm. So your job is to find the fire, right? What's setting off the alarm? What is the root cause, right? Um, this is one that I teach people in the clinic all day long. My poor front desk lady has probably heard this analogy like a million times. But the traffic light analogy is a good rule of thumb. For most cases, most conditions, it is okay to work through a little bit of discomfort. Um, Complete rest isn't always the right thing to do. So typically we say 0 to 3 is green light, 4 to 6 is yellow, 7 to 10, that's a, back off for sure. So load management is key. Alrighty. Graded exposure. Our bodies are very capable of healing and building more tissue capacity, but most people run into problems when they've gone too fast too soon, right? And so it has to be in a graded incremental fashion, right? Slowly over time. So progressive overload, right? But most people don't understand that and think that it should happen way too fast, to be completely honest with you. Alrighty. Couple quick tips on how to train around pain. If pressing hurts, couple adjustments. Neutral grip is almost always going to feel a lot nicer on your shoulders. Changing the angle, right? A slight incline is often better than a flat. Um, Dumbbells for sure are usually going to be nicer on the shoulders than barbell, especially early on. So um, pulling, right? We probably need to do more pulling, most of us. I feel like I've been actually pretty good about that lately, personally. Um, Overhead work, don't automatically remove it, right? Again, you can change the angle. Landmine variations are one of my favorites. Progress gradually. So the goal for rehab in general, first goal, calm things down. Second goal, regain mobility and flexibility. Third goal, regain stability and capacity. And then finally, return to strength and performance. Okay, that's rehab in a nutshell. That's every single condition, every single diagnosis. That's why, like we were saying before, labels do not equal solutions, right? So calm it down, regain your motion, your mobility, work on stability, and then back to strength and performance. That's how it works. So um, I don't think I'm going to go through those. Make sure you're doing your warm ups. I'll probably do a training on that. Um, Minimum effective dose too. That's another one. I think the older I've gotten, the more experienced I become in practicing physical therapy and also just training in the gym on my own personal fitness journey. I've learned to respect the minimum of the concept of minimum effective dose. Um, I love being in the gym. I love working out, and I love pushing my body. But I think as I've become older and wiser, I've learned that minimum effective dose is so important, right? Like you still want the desired outcome, but you only want to do exactly what you need to do to get that outcome and not more, right? So, final kind of before we let you go, these 5 rules is kind of the final takeaway. Manage load. Make sure to so this is the load versus capacity thing that you'll hear me say over and over again. Number 2, modify movements. Don't just stop, right? Change angles, change tempo. Decrease intensity if needed, right? Things like this. There's always ways to train around pain. Some discomfort is okay. Use the traffic light analogy as a guide. Progress gradually. All right. And then consistency is key. So, all righty, let me stop share. We'll come back. So that's it for the first one, guys. We'll keep these kind of short and sweet, hopefully. And as I start funneling more people into this group, hopefully people will hop on and we'll have questions and we can chit chat and get to know people. But that's it for this one, guys. We'll see you, like I said, every Thursday, 7 p.m. Mountain Time. And bring your shoulder pain questions and hope to see you in the next one.